Welcome to StopFake, the place where we debunk fakes about Ukraine. I'm Jim Kovpak with StopFake's latest dissection of Russian alternate reality. This week's disinformation menu brings you the following. Ukraine plans to classify Crimea and Donbas residents as terrorists. Former NATO Secretary General Rasmussen advocates for an independent course for Crimea. And Ukraine plans to open camps for Syrian refugees? Let's get to the details. Russian media are busy disseminating new fakes claiming Ukrainian authorities plan to designate residents of Crimea and Donbas as terrorists. Ukrainian authorities view Crimeans with Russian passports and Donbas residents with Donetsk or Luhansk People's Republic passports as terrorists, declared Tsarograd, while Pravda opined that Ukraine had once again made an absurd statement. Dozh TV featured a story claiming that Ukraine was passing legislation which could place Crimean holders of Russian passports under suspicion of terrorism. Later, Dozh changed its story and apologized for its inaccurate headline. The Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republic are the self-proclaimed separatist areas of eastern Ukraine who recently announced they are issuing passports. Russia said it would recognize these documents. The source for this misleading and manipulated story is an article from the Apostrophe portal asking if Ukrainians living in occupied Crimea and Donbas are eligible for visa-free travel to the EU. Journalist Yulia Zabalina writes that Ukrainian passport holders are eligible. She ends her story with a quote she attributes to the Ukrainian Migration Service. Passports from unrecognized republics could give rise to suspicion of terrorist activities. It is this phrase that has given birth to countless Russian fakes. Zabalina told StopFake that she stands by her story, and the Ukrainian Migration Service said that her story is largely accurate. The Migration Service emphasized that it is not their responsibility to decide whether someone is a terrorist because they are carrying an LNR or DNR identification document. Ukraine's Security Service, the SBU, told StopFake that a Russian or LNR and DNR passports in themselves are not grounds for suspicion of terrorist activity. However, common sense tells us that anyone trying to present as a legal passport something that nobody other than Russia recognizes is going to arouse suspicion. And in a world anxious about terrorism, of course someone with what looks like a fake passport might be suspected of being a terrorist. Russian media regularly publish stories claiming that the West has resigned itself to the annexation of Crimea and is ready to compromise with the Kremlin regarding sanctions. Pro-Russian delegations of marginal European politicians regularly feted in the annexed peninsula are presented as official delegations, proving that the West is softening its position on Crimea. Last week, former NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen became the newest victim of Russian media manipulation when RIA Novosti quoted him out of context, claiming that Rasmussen did not rule out that Crimea will not be part of Ukraine in the future and might strike out on an independent course. RIA managed to run 3 separate stories based on Rasmussen's answer to a question on whether the West should exchange Crimea for Kaliningrad that was jokingly posed at an American think tank, the Hudson Institute's conference, U.S. Sanctions on Russia, Evaluating Impacts and Costs. This is Rasmussen's answer.
As regards Crimea, that we should pursue exactly the same policies as we did after the illegal annexation of the 3 Baltic states into the Soviet Union. We never ever recognized that Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania were just republics in the Soviet Union. So eventually circumstances gave them a chance to regain independence, and immediately we could recognize their new freedom and their new independence. I wouldn't exclude the possibility that one day in the future circumstances will allow us to welcome Crimea as a free entity, whether it will be an integrated part of Ukraine or whatever. I don't know how, but I wouldn't exclude the possibility that a new situation could arise. So we should never ever recognize the illegal annexation of Crimea.
Rasmussen did not advocate recognizing the occupation of Crimea. On the contrary, he emphasized that recognizing the annexation was bound to have dangerous consequences and would encourage other authoritarian rulers to seize others' territories. The U.S. news and entertainment site BuzzFeed published a story last month claiming that during Ukrainian Prime Minister Volodymyr Hrysman's March visit to Ankara, he agreed that Ukraine would help Turkey with refugees from Syria. Citing a report in the Ukrinform state news agency, BuzzFeed contributor Blake Adams wrote that Ukraine would establish refugee centers in the Odessa, Kherson, and Mykolaiv regions. He attributes his claim to Middle East Research Institute Director Ihor Semivolos. Turkey is looking to ease its Syrian refugee burden, and now Europe will be flooded with new waves of illegal refugees, but this time they would be coming from Ukraine, concludes Adams. BuzzFeed linked to the Facebook post by Yuri Koval, who in turn linked to a site called Vse Novosti and someone called Mykola Dobranyuk, both claiming that Ukraine agreed to take in Syrian refugees from Turkey. Neither Koval nor Dobranyuk have any other post on the internet. The BuzzFeed story, written in suspiciously bad English, should have immediately raised red flags, but it did not until we at StopFake checked it out. Ukrinform never ran a story claiming Ukraine would build refugee centers to accommodate Syrian refugees from Turkey. The agency covered Hrysman's visit to Turkey in a detailed analysis of Ukraine-Turkey cooperation with no mention of refugee centers. The bloggers BuzzFeed cited embedded a doctored screenshot of the Ukrinform story. Ihor Semivolos, the director of the Middle East Research Institute, was quoted in the real Ukrinform story. He did not say anything about refugees or refugee centers. He pointed out the fake in a Facebook post. After StopFake debunked this fake story, BuzzFeed pulled it from its site. If only all our work was this effective. That's it for this week. You can get more information about these stories and more on our website. Give us a click. Be vigilant. Beware of fakes. If you spot any disinformation about Ukraine, send it to us for a truth autopsy. And remember, consuming fake news is bad for your health, your brain, and the psychological climate of society, so don't do it. I'm Jim Kovpak, and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.